I started doing workshops and doing groups where I'm getting up in front of others, like outside of the gym setting, and talking about resilience and perseverance and goal setting and vision and taking action.
You should know what 1 hour of your time is worth. You should know the value that you bring to the marketplace. You know what you're passionate.
Starts with clarity of vision. If you don't have the clarity of vision, whatever next thing you get, you're not going to see it through because you don't have the clarity of vision. So the point of my pain was being told you will never run or jump again. And all that stuff, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to be able to take this even bigger.
To know why you do what you do, you have to know how to charge for what you do. That's how you're going to change your life, and that's how you're going to leave a legacy for your children and your family. You got to know your worth.
Happy Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob, and I'm back with episode number 378 of Shut Up and Grind. We're all about overcoming obstacles, defying the odds, and inspiring you to block whatever is in your way from the success that you want. And I forgot to turn down the volume on my phone. Joys of live streaming. So, a couple times this week, I have been asked about why I wear a tank top and why don't I wear professional attire. Well, you can't tell from the background, but I'm sitting in a gym. I'm a fitness coach. I'm an athlete. And you guys know I preach authenticity. So I would never show up to this gym in a shirt and tie. So when I'm doing my events, this is how you're going to get me. If this doesn't work for your event, then I guess I don't get booked. But I'm not going to compromise who I am at my core just to get an opportunity. And for example, 2 months ago, I spoke on a panel and I had a pre-call. And during the pre-call, the host had said, we expect you to come in professional attire. I said, absolutely, we'll do. I said, but answer me this. Whose profession are we using? I said, because in mine, this is how I can show up. I said, so it's up to you. So they had me on and I blew away that panel. Not to toot my own horn, but by the time I was done with my part of the presentation, nobody cared what I was wearing. So be you, show up as you 100% every single time, and then the right opportunities will open up for you. All right, let's get to today's topic, America and therapy, healing a nation from the inside out. So helping me have this conversation is Phyllis. And she says, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by the chaos around you, heartbroken over what will leave it to future generations, or simply unsure how you can make a difference, this conversation offers hope, direction, and a new kind of leadership from within. So let's welcome Phyllis to the show. How we doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Let's grab my notebook here. Yeah, if you see me looking down, that's because I'm taking notes. All right. So where are you joining me from?
I'm in Taos, New Mexico.
New Mexico. All right. Are you originally from there?
No, I'm from New Jersey.
Oh, a Jersey girl. All right. How'd you land in New Mexico?
I came out to the Southwest when I was about 20, and I just fell in love with the Southwest, and I always wanted to go back. So when my kids were little, I moved back out here.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it definitely beats the hustle and bustle of New Jersey, depending where in Jersey you lived.
Totally.
Oh boy. So I forgot to prep you for the one question that I ask everybody, because a lot of people fumble this answer. So I usually tell people before we go live, but I messed up, so we'll just do it in real time. Is I want to know, you just heard me mention during the monologue who I am at my core. And I want to know, who are you at yours?
Who am I at my core? Ooh, I love that question. I think it's a hard one to answer because so many things come to mind. But I think at my core, I'm a seeker after healing and wisdom and love and safety for humanity, really. I think that's who I have become through my own journey.
Yeah, see, I was gonna say that because usually I don't interject in people's answers, but that's who you've become, right? Before that journey, you had a set of core values. What was they?
Before that journey, I think my set of core values was really I think I was always a seeker. I think that I was always looking for some kind of healing, not necessarily knowing what I was trying to heal from when I was younger, but there was a sense that something wasn't right, that I needed to somehow find a way to heal and become my greatest potential. Because when I was very young, I felt very blocked. So I think that's always been in there.
Okay, so you said you were blocked. How so?
Yeah, I mean, I think I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I wasn't like anybody else. I felt like I had this great life force in me that couldn't come out. But I always had, not always, but maybe from early, like 13 years old, I had a sense that I was a writer. I had a sense that writing was my path, and as a preteen and teenager, I began to write poetry as a way to connect with myself because it felt like that was the opening to discover who I really was inside and release whatever this was that felt so kind of tamped down. And so I wrote poetry, I wrote little pieces, and I had some amazing experiences doing that of real connection to my authentic self. And I love the way you use the word authentic because there's something about that that has power. My authentic self is like who I am in my core and who I came to become even more so as I learn and grow. So writing was always my key.
Okay, so as that 13-year-old, what type of poetry were you writing?
I don't remember most of it. I think I was just trying to let my feelings out and because they were so blocked up. And what I discovered later, and I can share here, is that what I discovered later in my life was that I had been abused as a child and I had just buried those memories. And so there was a real sense that there was something buried and I didn't know what it was. And that's what really wanted to come out. I think that's what wanted to come out in my poetry, but I couldn't even understand my own symbolism at that time in my life until I actually began to remember.
And literally every guest that I've interviewed, it always goes back to some form of childhood issue, like with every single one. I'm dealing with it now with my own kids because, like, I'll admit, when I was younger, I mean, I was 25 years old when I became a dad. My parents were pretty strict, and you kind of repeat the cycle. So
Right.
to me, I didn't think it was anything wrong. But my kids are older now. My two oldest ones are 26 and 23, and
Mm,
now it's like you were this and you were that and you were this and you were that. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm thinking. I thought I was doing pretty well, but apparently I left some scars on them. So yeah, everybody goes through that.
right.
So you said at 13 you didn't really know how to process it. So when did you start to piece together? Well, like I know you just said later in life, but
Yeah. Yeah.
leading up to the discovery.
Yeah. So leading, I had some very profound spiritual experiences when I was young in nature, where I just had this amazing connection to the earth and to divine love that were so out of the world that I lived in, so out of anything that I knew about religion or God or anything like that. That they gave those experiences also gave me a certain kind of hope for a much deeper connection in life. So I joined a spiritual group when I was um, in my very early 20s, and and I got married. I had three little children, and my world just kind of fell apart. I think all those memories were starting to come to the surface. I had, made a marriage that was very dysfunctional for me. And I think all of the pressure of being a young mother and in a not good relationship and trying to find myself spiritually, it just kind of all imploded. And I ended up beginning to remember. And I was keeping a journal the whole time. And that was sort of my access. I kept a journal. Um, I began to, and then I went to therapy actually at that point. And when the memories were starting to come, and I began a process of healing from what came to the surface. And in the process of that, I made an even deeper spiritual connection with myself and began to hear guidance about what my soul was doing in the experiences that I was having on the ground level of, being a human being in a very in a very trying kind of circumstance. And so that there was a meaning and purpose that my spirit had actually wanted to explore and expand and transform in the experiences that I was having as Phyllis. And that gave a different kind of meaning than I just have to heal from the pain of it. It was like, oh, my soul really has a purpose here. And part of the purpose was to share my healing journey, because I think that's what happens for people. If you experience something really good, you want to give it away to other people. You want other people to have that
Mm.
experience. So I became a therapist, and I kind of had these two tracks in my life. I had the therapy track, and I had this spiritual opening and receiving
Let
guidance
me let
at
me
this
pause
point.
you.
Sure.
Let me pause you really quick. Let me write this down. Therapy and spiritual, so you can pick back up where you left off. Because you unpacked a good amount there. But I want to circle back
Sure.
to your nature connection, because
Mm,
it seems like out of everything you just said, like that would be the thing that stood out to me, right? But because that's one of my outlets, right?
mm.
One of my outlets when I do have stress and enter my life. I drive to the nearest state park, put headphones on, and I go for a walk. Like, it's absolutely love being out there. So I want you to just talk a little bit deeper on that nature connection.
Yeah. Well, it happened in a couple of different ways, and these were things that just happened. I wasn't trying to make anything happen. I didn't even have an idea that the experiences that I would have could even exist for a person, because nobody talked about anything like that when I was growing up. So the first one was when I was in college. I was in Boston, and there's a very beautiful park in Boston called Boston Commons, and I was
Oh yeah.
walking through Boston Commons, by myself, and I think it was autumn, because my memory is that it was kind of that golden glow of light on leaves and flowers that were kind of fading, and I was just walking around Boston Commons, and all of a sudden, it was literally like the veil of being a human just lifted, and I was in the
Mm.
natural world, and it was alive, and it was beautiful, and there's really no words for it. It just felt like I was one with Mother Earth and nature, and I was just filled with absolute love. Um, and then it faded away, and of course I wanted that back. Um,
Yeah.
but I think one of the things I'd love to share is that my experience of these moments of beautiful spiritual connection and awakening were always followed by a sense of the darkness that I lived in. And when I was younger, I thought that was sort of like punishment, or why would that happen after such an experience of opening, that it would feel like the world shut down around me. But what I came to
Mm.
understand was something very different, that the light comes to light up the darkness. It was showing me what I needed to heal. And then that guidance became even greater later on. So that was the first one. The second experience I had was a summer I spent in Arizona, which I might have referenced earlier. That's what brought me back to the Southwest. Was I was in Kingman, Arizona, and I felt like my soul had come home when I first saw the desert. And I had these profound experiences there of feeling like the earth was talking to me about the principles that the earth was functioning on. I never wrote any of that down. So I don't even remember most of what that was. I just remember that I had that experience and that connection. And at the end of that summer, and I'll tell you kind of how spirit and psychology so wove together for me, I didn't wanna go back. I was living in New York City at the time, I was going to the New School College. I didn't wanna, well, I can't remember if that's correct, but I know I was living in New York. Yeah, I was living in New York City. I didn't wanna go back. I went out into the desert, and I prayed to God to show me a way I could just stay there. And I got an answer that was I mean, I heard an answer loud and clear in my head, and it was, "You cannot do that. You have been a desert hermit in other lives, and you have to go back and work it out with people." And I did. And that's what my story was, and I that guidance was just unmistakable. I knew it to be the truth. And so, went back and had a long journey after that.
All right. Yeah. So I don't ever tell people where they get their guidance from. Like, you can believe in God, you can believe in the universe, you can believe in the law of attraction. Like, doesn't matter. But the thing is that it exists. It
Right.
totally exists. Because one of the worst moments in my life was in early 2023 when I had lost everything, and I was in a dark, dark place. And I was gonna pivot away from the fitness industry, and I started taking classes for digital marketing. Like, I walked away from my fitness business, all that stuff, and I went back and I started coaching track again. And
Mm,
that first practice, it's like I felt the moment where everything just lit back up again. And I
mm,
got out of that dark place. Like, fortunately, I didn't need to go to therapy or anything. Just in that moment, I just stepped back into my purpose,
wow.
and I was like a brand new person. So that definitely happened. Like I said, regardless of what people believe in, like, that definitely happened. So I'll kick it back to you. You were talking about therapy and spiritual.
Well, and I want to comment on what you said, because
Mhm.
part of what was challenging for me was I had no reference for such powerful inner guidance. I just didn't grow up that way. I grew up very much steeped in the intellect and academia. That was the culture that I grew up in. And so to get a source of information that wasn't from a book or wasn't from another person, but was so powerfully true inside of me, was both incredibly illuminating and a little bit frightening. And so there was a process of really learning to trust that guidance. Um, and as I said, it seemed like every moment of light on that level of heart opening or divine somehow intervention in my own healing process, every moment of that opening showed me the next step of where I needed to heal on a very psychological level. And I think that that's personally, I think that that relationship between spirit and psychology is very important, because I think when people don't heal their original wounds or their conditioning or their mindset that may not be totally functional, or loving or cooperative, or peaceful or safe, when people don't have a chance to heal that, they often bring those kind of dynamics to their religion or their spiritual practice or their spiritual beliefs about other people, that can become very scary and harmful, um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said showed the next step, and now
Mm,
I don't know if my sister is still listening, because she can verify that almost every single show I say this at least once, that when you stop focusing on your problems, you see the opportunities that are waving at you. It's like
mhm.
the next step. It's right there. It's looking at you eye to eye, but you don't see it because you're worried on focused on the what happened and the woe is me and everything bad happens to me. There's a dark cloud over my head. My time has passed. It is what it is. People get caught up, and that was just off the top of my head. There's hundreds of excuses and reasons why people don't succeed, but the opportunity is right there. So, like, once I started coaching, that relit my soul. From there, the very first gym I walked into, I hit the jackpot in what I was looking for. Right, the very first one, and then there's just been positive snowball after positive snowball. I had to add 2 days to my podcast, and I'm already booking into June. With those 2 additional days, the first 2 days I had a booking into late July. Right now, I got speaking gig coming. I created 2 apps. Like, I went from literally being homeless, to having all of this stuff that's going on now, because I chose to stop pointing fingers and saying you have to get out of this.
Right.
Your thoughts?
And I think, yeah, and I think the best psychology really isn't about blame or shame of anyone, including ourselves. It's really about, what is it I need to heal from? What is the truth of what happened to me? What did I make from that? What did I make that mean about me that might not have been good? What were the coping mechanisms that I developed that weren't functional? And how can I change that? How can I heal the wound that was there so that I can make more functional, more healthy, more loving, more wise choices for myself in the present? And I think that's what you're describing. And I think that's exactly what what happens to anyone who's on an authentic healing journey is that somehow you lift the shadow of what was keeping you down, and you find more connection to who you were really meant to be in this life. So, I became a therapist out of doing therapy myself, and that was a perfect profession for me. I loved working deeply with people one-on-one. But I always kept the striving to be a writer, which was probably even closer to my heart and soul. And I began to write my story because it seemed because it was so helpful to me that I wanted to share the journey with other people.
Absolutely. And so, with what my sister just said, that's on the screen, and what you just said, are two of the most powerful things in anyone's journey. Now, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, but on this show, I've interviewed probably about 100 from all over the world. Yeah. And a lot of them, they all say the same thing. It doesn't matter how many people you see, how many pills you take, how many self-help groups you go to. Ultimately, you have to make the decision to flip the switch.
Right.
So whatever avenue it takes to get you there, do what you got to do. But at the end of the day, I had to decide I'm not doing this anymore. And then you start taking those steps to get it done. She also had one more. That's why I plan my days and work my plan. Exactly. It's like you can't sit and wait. Like the universe isn't going to hand it to you on a silver platter. It's like you yourself have to put some work in.
Right. And I think, what I found from my own life and from being a therapist for so many years is that the main motivator for that whole journey is pain. It's like, it's really not working. What I'm doing is not working. And I need to find another road through this, because it's like banging your head against the wall. I tried to be a better student. That didn't heal my wounds. I tried to be a better mom. That didn't heal my wounds. It was important for me to do those things. But I think the pain of the disconnection from myself, which was really the pain, was the main motivator. And I think in our culture, we don't always really honor pain. We're really quick to want to get out of it and push it away and not feel it. And while nobody wants to feel pain, and I certainly don't, it's not only a motivator, but it holds the seeds of what needs to be healed. If your appendix is hurting on the right side of your tummy, you got to take the appendix out. So it's the same with our psyches. If you had poor conditioning, or you were told negative things about yourself, or you were abandoned, or there was abuse in your home, that's what needs to be healed. It's not a sign that you're a flawed person. It's kind of like the fuel for the engine. That's what I'm going to burn up to power this engine of my authentic self in the world. So there's a certain place for not going around, but going through to get to the other side. And I think the best therapy really offers that.
Yeah, agreed. And I work with people. I don't say anything about the medical side of therapy. I'm not a therapist, so I don't go there. But I work with people who are ready to tell their story.
Yeah.
It's let's take you from what happened to how did this not break you, right? And you would know, you're the expert here. I think a lot of people stay in that hamster wheel because they're stuck on what happened, and not the fact that thing didn't break you. It's just quickly, I was speaking with someone on grief. And she's like, I just can't get over this. I just can't get over this. All right, so once you found out the news, what happened? Then what happened? All right, then what happened? How was it the next morning? How was it at dinner with that person gone? Right, and we just completely got further and further away from the what happened. And then she started, over time, obviously this wasn't just in one session, but over time, she was able to turn that into a keynote presentation. And going back to right up above us, your true power lies in your story.
Right. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. And whether you get it through the process that you did, there's therapy processes that are just like that, of telling the story and going all the way through it to the other side, with different techniques that are very, very powerful. And it's that expression, your pain becomes your purpose. And that's the point. The point is to heal it. The point is to know that it's not a sign of a flaw in you. You didn't deserve bad things happening to you. That's just the raw material your spirit came here to work with that can be transformed for your good and the good of other people. And nobody does it perfectly. And one of the things that I think really helps a lot of people go through that part of the journey and come out the other side is having somebody like yourself or like a therapist or like another person who does some kind of healing work or inspirational work to be there to really hold that there is light on the other side of this. There's someplace you're going with this that's going to be so worth the journey and so worth the effort to get there.
Yeah, I went to, no, I didn't go anywhere. 3 years ago, I interviewed someone on this show, and he was big into horses when he was growing up. And so he ended up joining the military. He got deployed and went through some traumatic things while he was overseas. And so when he came back, he had PTSD very, very badly, and it was consuming him. He contemplated ending it all. And what did he do? He got back to his core. His core was he loved horses. He had a big farm. He was, decently well off at the time. He's very well now. But he ended up turning his farm. He got more horses, and he opened it up to other veterans who were healing.
Wonderful.
So like it doesn't really matter what the outlet is, because not one thing is going to work for every single person. But it's about finding what your outlet is. Like for me, it was coaching. Getting back into that environment was the one little step that I needed to get me to where I am now. And the quicker people can realize what that outlet is, they'll be on a faster path to healing.
I think that
you are not alone. Motivator, to move forward. Yeah, absolutely.
That is so true. And what I tell people, often people will say, well, where do you start? Let's just say you're not in therapy, or maybe you don't have access to that. Although I do think therapy with the right person is a really great asset to healing. But
yes.
I always say to people, start with what you love. It's exactly what you're saying. If you're drawn to art, do your art. If you're drawn to animals, do animals. If you love music, do music. If you love science, do science. Where what you love is that foundational part of you that can bring you back and help you heal. Because whatever hurt us, you might call, is some kind of destructive energy. And so if you begin to tap into your creative energy, that's part of the antidote to what hurt in the first place. And there's many people who have, so for me, it was writing. For you, it was coaching. And for me, it was also art and nature, and it might be more than one thing, but do what you love. And I know that I did those things, long before I went to therapy, and they were part of what kept me going.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about your book, because time is flying.
Okay.
See, and again, that's why I like the organic conversations. It's like, this doesn't feel like forced or scripted or anything. We're just bouncing off of each other, using our experiences, and it just makes for a real, genuine conversation. You see, my sister said, yes, I felt at home helping veterans. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
All right, so let's talk about your book, because I don't want to run out of time, so make sure we can cover whatever we need to cover.
Well, basically from being a client myself and working with so many people who had suffered in some way, often in their family of origin, most often in their family of origin, because there's a lot of dysfunction going on in the world and in America today in our homes. It became really clear to me that what goes on in the home that's not healthy is a mirror that we could look through, or a lens that we could look through what's going on in our country with that lens. Because all groups of people operate on some form of a family dynamic. There's people in charge. There's people that have to listen. There's either good skills for cooperation and for working out conflict and feeling loved and supported and provided for, or there might be abuse and neglect and rage or isolation or, lack of provision or being ostracized. These are the things that happen in dysfunctional homes, and these are exactly the same things that happen in a dysfunctional nation. And so for me, I think there were two really big things that motivated, there are so many things that motivated me to write this book, but the two I want to mention right here are that in the culture we live in, we're kind of being conditioned to believe that we're suffering from an ideological problem, an ideological divide. And my contention is that it's a mental health issue. that we're suffering from. And that's the biggest missing piece in our conversation culturally, societally, and politically today, because mentally healthy people are not violent. They're not hateful. They're not discriminatory. They're not murderous. They don't take joy in seeing somebody else suffer. Mentally healthy people are generous. They're kind. They're supportive of other people's good, good outcome. They want to help each other. They really are committed, whether it's always possible or not, but there's a commitment to nonviolent conflict resolution. These are the hallmarks of a healthy person and a healthy family. And so if we look at our country, not through the lens of blame and shame at all, but what's our history that got us to this place? What are the skills and the tools and the understandings that psychology has to offer that could help us heal our nation and bring us back together to working together and minimize the violence and minimize the divisiveness? Because that's what we all want in our own lives. So the other big motivator, and there are many, was, what is this gap between what we all want in our own lives for ourselves, for our partners, for our children, for the people we love, which is peace and safety and feeling loved and supported and being provided for and feeling like we belong and we're wanted, and that there's a commitment in the people around us to work with our disagreements in a peaceful way. That's what we want in our own lives, and yet we don't necessarily advocate that on a national level. And what created that gap? And for me, the lens of psychology and mental health provides answers that we can't get politically and culturally and socially. And that's why I wrote the book. And I wrote it for the layman. It's, it talks about what are the hallmarks of a healthy family. And again, none of us do this perfectly. We all have our bad moments. But in a healthy family, we try to repair them rather than just blame other people for our bad moments. What are the hallmarks of a dysfunctional or abusive family? How does that microcosm of everything I've learned in psychology apply to the macrocosm of a country so that we could begin a healing process, not a blame, shame, attack process, but a healing process? Because I actually believe in the biggest picture that the fate of humanity rests on our ability to come back from the edge of conflict and war and hatred and discrimination, because we have so much power to destroy on such a huge level. And we have so many tools in the field of psychology that we're not using on a global level or a national level that we could.
Yes, let me jump in quick because I forgot that I had this stored in my assets. So now, do I agree with everything Malcolm X has ever said? No, I don't. But he totally called this one in the 60s. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. That's power because they control the minds of the masses. And like that's an essence of what you were just saying. It's
right.
Like that's the biggest issue because the media is putting out clips, edited things. And now with AI, you don't know what the heck is real, but
right.
people see stuff and they just run with it. They just run with it without getting the full story or finding the actual base source. And then social media is just a dumpster fire. It's just everybody fighting everybody and name calling and blaming. It's crazy. And people just read something and then that's automatically law. Like there's no critical thought whatsoever. I think that's playing a huge role. Because let's just go back. Like we both remember life before social media, right? And back when the news was the news, and now they're just different political propaganda arms, and it doesn't matter if you're right, left, or center. It's all represented out there. So whatever side people are on, they're only fed half the story. The other side's fed half the story, and it keeps all of us fighting while the people who actually run the country take that division right to the bank, going back to divide and conquer.
Right. And that's an abuse of power. And that's what the correlation is between an abuser in a family. An abuser in a family has total power over the people that they can harm. Otherwise, they couldn't abuse them. So there's a huge power differential that allows abuse and neglect and exploitation and all of those things that you're talking about to happen. And usually the abuser learned that somewhere. often they're just repeating what they learned, or they were so badly hurt that some part of their psyche decided early on, I'm never going to be the underdog again, so I'll be the overdog. I'll be the one on top, and I'll be the one who dominates. And so often unconsciously they just repeat what they know in terms of harming other people. So we have this, I think we have on a psychological level in our country and around the world, a growing tendency to have more and more people who have identified with the aggressor, and a whole other group of people who have been so subdued by being hurt that they are unable to fight back. And this is a very dangerous trend in our psychological development, that, again, this is what psychology is trained to heal, that people come who have felt helpless and powerless to stand up for themselves or become safe or heal, find their voice, they find their heart, they find their appropriate power. And when people come to therapy, and it's less often that people who have identified with the aggressor seek help, because sometimes there's a feeling of power in being the aggressor that they don't want to give up. But when people do come to therapy who have identified with the aggressor, they learn, they make contact with that wounded little self inside of them, and begin to grow their empathy and compassion, and their behavior changes. And I don't mean to, there's no one size fits all. I'm giving you some generalities. There are many people who have also identified with the aggressor toward themselves. And that's what they need to heal, because they're beating themselves up, or doing self-destructive behaviors. So these are some just general things that I think the world of psychology has to offer that most of us really don't know, because we're not taught psychology like the 3 R's in school.
So you mentioned earlier about pain being a major motivator for most people. So as I was listening to you in the first part, when you first started, this quote popped up into my head, that the hero and the villain are both driven by pain. Whereas the hero has been hurt so badly, he wants to protect the world. The villain has been hurt so badly that he wants to hurt the world.
Yeah, I think
What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I think that there's some truth in that. And I think the big thing that I see as a therapist, and I'm not patting myself on the back here, I'm just saying that I think people who work in this world can see that is not part of our conversation, is that we're actually looking to create a world where you don't have to be that kind of hero, and you don't have to become that kind of villain. Because if the hero has to conquer the villain, if we're actually committed to a world where we don't want to create villains, we want to help people heal and actually break the cycle of abuse. So PTSD and trauma are not handed down generation to generation, whether it's in a family of origin or in a highly discriminatory community, or a war where people are so injured that they then need the heroes to come in and help them. What if we actually could break this cycle of violence and abuse and hatred and exploitation? Then what would we have? What kind of a society would we have? And could we envision that? And one of the things I think of about humanity is, yes, we have incredible propensity toward violence, and destruction, but we're also unbelievably inventive and creative and imaginative. And we've imagined getting to the moon, and we got there. We imagined doing, a heart replacement surgery, and we did it. We have imagined this, you and me talking to each other on a screen, and we created it. If we were to imagine a world that was safe for everyone, and we actually put our minds to it and our hearts to it and our resources to it, we could create it. It's not pie in the sky. It's just not the agenda yet.
That's the problem. Now, typically, I don't say very many negative things, but I just think there's too much money in the division. It's like we can do it on a community level. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that my grandkids and great grandkids will grow up in a much more kind world than what's going on now.
Right.
But there's just so much money. There's billions and billions of dollars and people fighting each other. And you don't think people profit off of the riots? and the protests and all this other stuff. Like there's people at the top who are profiting from all of this stuff. So like I try to channel mine like into the community. Like what you can do, the people I can see, I can shake hands, I can kiss babies, can do all of that stuff. Because I see a lot of good out there. I
Right.
really only see the bad when I flip on TV or for whatever reason I go on Twitter or whatever it's called
Right.
now. Like you see it there running rampant. But when I go out to the mall, I see people getting along. I work at one of the busiest buffets in the country, and we are such a melting pot. We get all the races. You get the Harris Waltz shirts, you get the MAGA hats on, and everybody's in there just having a great time.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's online. Online is where you're seeing all the real division. I've never walked into a CVS and just seen a political war break out. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
on the community level, it doesn't happen. Just online is where people get their tough guy arms.
I really agree with you. When I go to the store, when I'm out and about in my community, people are lovely and kind and helpful, and they enjoy laughing. And I think we appreciate each other when we're like, "Hi, how are you? How's your day?" And it can just light us up on a very daily level to have that kind of interaction. So I agree with you. I think people are basically good, basically kind, and it's not what's being fed to us. And I think the part where you were talking about that it's very profitable to sow seeds of division and violence and discrimination and all of that. Unfortunately, I think that's true. And I think on that level, that part of what we're suffering from and really gets highlighted in social media and the news, unfortunately, is that these are addictions. It's an addiction to power. It's an addiction to wealth. It's an addiction to righteousness. It's an addiction to, taking resources from other people that don't belong to us, whatever, because the addiction is like nothing is ever enough. I got to get the next fix. And so often in the field of addiction, the person is destroying themselves, but they're also really hurting the people around them. And I think that's a lot of what's happening in the country today. And if we look at it through that lens, again, not by the pointing finger, blame, shame lens, but what do we know about healing from addiction? There's so much that's known about the roots of addiction, sometimes the pain that underlies addiction, or the faulty, conditioning and upbringing that people have, and what's necessary for healing. And I'll just say this last piece, and I want you to jump back in. So often now in treatment centers, and I think this has been going on for a long time, part of the treatment for addiction is bringing in the family and healing the dynamics of the family. And that's exactly what's needed in America today, that we look at the family of America and the dynamics of the family of America and the history of the family of America, and really look at what needs to be healed fearlessly, because sometimes it's confronting.
Yeah, so the family dynamic now is a family of five is out to dinner, and all five of them are on their phones.
Yeah, and that's a sad thing. It's a very
Yep.
sad thing.
You see it in
One
the airports, everywhere. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think it's also, again, a mental health issue, at heart, because one of the things that I've thought a lot about, and you probably have too, with what you're saying, is that, we have created amazing technologies. They're really mind-boggling what people have
Yeah.
invented and are able to do. Like when I look at the inside of the space station and all those wires and everything, like who invented that? Not my mind, So we're amazing. We're so intelligent. We're so inventive. We're so creative. But that doesn't mean we should use or do everything that we're capable of inventing. And I think we have to really make choices around technology. Is that level of our technological use, where, like you're saying, 5 people sitting at a table together in a restaurant and they're not talking, they're all on their phones, is that good for us? Does that actually feed the place in us that really needs love and connection? Because we're born that way. And even science will tell you that we're born wired for love and connection, and we need to get it from other people.
I want your opinion on this. So I believe it was Einstein who made the quote. So this was long before all the stuff that we have now. But he said the way that technology is going, we're going to create a nation of idiots. You know, and it's one of those things where we live in a time where you don't have to have any education or any talent and you can get rich. But
Mhm.
yet, what's still being fed to us in the news? There's no opportunities. Women are discriminated. Black and brown people are discriminated, and people hate the Jews and this and that. And I'm like, why don't we channel that energy and teach people how to be successful? How about that? Because it can happen. Like I'm actually right when I'm done with you, I'm putting the finishing touches on an app teaching people how to earn $10,000 a month with AI. You know, it's like anyone can do it. A 12-year-old can do it, but yet we're still living in this facade, and that's because the corporations and the CEOs, they need workers. You know, so we're not teaching the next generation how to utilize this technology and utilize these tools because we need them just smart enough to get a job, and that's, I think, a sad reality in our society.
Well, I think what you're talking about, at least from one perspective, is that part of that making choices around technology is that we really have to choose to feed our humanity alongside our use of technology. And I think it has to become a conscious choice because technology itself is addictive. It
Yeah.
just is. You know, you can do so much on your screen and it can be so much fun and you can get instantaneous information about how to fix your car and whatever, that it is itself addictive. So I think we have to make a choice of how we're going to use our technology for the good and keep our sense of our relatedness and our real deep connection to our own humanity, which is compassion and generosity and connection and really learning about one another and not being so self-centered. How do we keep that
Yes.
alive at the same time?
Mm,
Because that's really, you know, I've never met somebody who didn't want more love and more healthy relationship and more friendship and more creative success and more a better relationship with their children. That's what we want.
yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so I think as individuals and as a culture, we actually have to talk about keeping that alive.
Yeah, exactly. So my sister said yes because they are taking away our ability to think or troubleshoot. Yeah, that's true. Like I had mentioned that earlier with social media. Like people post a meme and think it's a fact check. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
that's not a fact check because you found a meme that says what you wanted to say. It's like anyone can do that. But the problem is people don't question. Like the woman I interviewed yesterday, right? She's a Ukrainian immigrant, and she said, the difference between living there and living here is like here people just blindly follow.
Mm,
It's like nobody asks questions, nobody gives any pushback. Like they see things and they just do it.
right.
And like pushing back is necessary because if we don't ask questions,
That's right.
then this is just going to get worse and worse. Just
And
unfortunately, sometimes the question askers end up getting taken out. And so
well, I
we've
think
seen that throughout history.
absolutely. And that's one of the direct correlations between an abusive family and an abusive country is that you're not allowed to question. You're punished for questioning. You're punished for or ostracized or even killed for having a different need, a different point of view, maybe a better perspective, or just calling out the abuse itself. And so this is one of the correlations I'm making in American therapy. Again, so we could heal it. Do we want to live in an abusive society? Do we want to be silenced if we have an alternative point of view or a better idea? Nobody wants that in their own life. So why are we condoning that happening to other people? And that is a mental health issue for our country.
Agreed. All right, so God, we could talk all afternoon about this, but give us some final words of wisdom. Hype up your book. Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me. I have a website. It's www.phyllislevitt, just my name.com. My all of my books are listed there, but America in Therapy is my most recent book, and you can buy it from my website. You can buy it wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, Amazon, any of the major booksellers carry the book. And I would love feedback. I'd love you can contact me through my website. I love to talk to anyone about their thoughts or feelings or their perspective. I'm open to your point of view, even if it differs from mine. So, and I'm on all the social media. I'm on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Substack and Instagram, whatever they all are. And I, post a lot of my interviews. I have, I have a newsletter you can sign up for, and I really try to write in-depth content in my newsletter. I'm not just advertising my book. Because for me, one of the places where I heal and where I feel like I have something to offer is what comes through me when I'm writing. So my words of wisdom to you out there are: follow what calls to you, follow what lights you up, what you love. It will inevitably be a contribution to other people, as well as a source of healing for yourself. And if you're hurting, if you're suffering, reach out, get help. It's not shameful to ask for help. It's actually a sign of strength that you're willing to open yourself up to a new way of being and reflecting on who you've been and what shaped your life and who you could become. Because we need you. We need your greatest potential. We need that in everybody. And it's actually one of the greatest things that we can do for one another is to support each other to be our greatest selves.
Absolutely. I don't even have to add anything to that. That was a perfect final words. All right. Well, thank you very much, for taking the time. Let me see. I always show at the end of the show. I do panels, even though I haven't done one yet this year. But speaking of, because you mentioned point of view, so I usually invite back 6 of my past guests, and we pick one topic, and we all roundtable that one topic.
Great.
Because there is no one way to do things.
That's right.
It's okay. If, like me, I say, hit them right between the eyes, hit them where it hurts. And there's going to be people out there that gravitate to that. Right? There's going to be people who need a more empathetic approach. There's people who are going to need 6 months to a year. There's people who might heal in 30 days. Right? You don't know that. So the more opinions, the more points of view, even on the political end, like it just kills me how, like, my own brother hasn't spoken to me since 2020 over freaking politics, just over a differing of an opinion. And that's all it is. It's an opinion. Right. It's like I can like an apple, you can like an orange, and we can still be brothers. Right. It's like it's okay.
Right.
But anyway, Clay. But yeah, thank you for coming. If you're interested in the panels, when I do the next one, what I typically do is I pick the guest first, and then I pick the title, because I've interviewed you all and I know what you all can speak on.
Okay. So I'd love that. I'd love to do it. That'd be fun.
Right. Monique, what do you mean today? All of my shows are good. All right, let's cue the outro. Don't sign out yet, though.
Okay.
All right. Oops, I cut her off on the thank you. My bad. All right, so that was Phyllis. So yeah, this was definitely a solid episode. So if you're on the stream now, if you didn't catch it from the beginning, it's worth where are we? 53 minutes. It's worth it. We covered a wide range of topics. If you're hurting in any way, if you're stuck in a rut, if you need healing from past trauma, or if you just want to hear me talk, just kidding. Right? Then make sure you go back and watch the whole thing. This will be up on Spotify as well, and all of the major podcast platforms. So as always, thank you for tuning in. I keep forgetting this is touchscreen. And cue the outro.
You've been listening to Shut Up and Grind. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. Robert has over 20 years experience pouring his knowledge and expertise at many events in the service and fitness industry, as well as secondary schools and universities. He has a true passion for helping others break through the barriers that are holding them back. To book Robert B. Foster to speak or to reach out, go to robertbfoster.com. Till next time, shut up and grind.